I'm Amy Nixon.
I'm Michael Ween.
And you're listening to the Raw Prospect Podcast, episode 53. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and thank you for listening. Welcome back, y'all. It's the Raw Prospect Podcast, episode 53, I believe. Or is it 52? 52. Okay. It seems like I always mess up the number every podcast now. It's like to the point where it's like such a big number. I don't even like I haven't even thought about So, anyways, welcome back, y'all. This is the wildcard weekend podcast. We've been waiting all year for this, and we get the 3 games per day. I can't even think of a wild card weekend where I've been this excited without the Cowboys playing in it. Like this is gonna be awesome.
It is. Before we get to our analysis and picks of each game, I just saw these stats, since we didn't really, I guess, talk about the NFL regular season as much as we usually do this year due to other circumstances. I just found this year, the regular season, there were more points, 12,692, and touchdowns, 1,473, than any season in NFL history. So any of the league's previous 100 seasons. 179 of the 256 games, 70% of them were within one score going into the fourth quarter. That's more than all but one season in NFL history, 2016. And then finally, there were 43 times this regular season that the winning team erased a deficit of 10 or more points. That ties a single-season league record. So a historic regular season, and now we get what they're calling Super Wild Card Weekend. As Amy said, 3 games each day. Tomorrow there's 1 AFC, 2 NFC, and then Sunday there'll be 2 AFC, 1 NFC. So it's going to be really fun. Today we're just going to go through, like we usually do, each game, talk about what we think we're going to see, the keys to the game, and then make our picks. And we'll probably do the same thing again next week for the divisional round.
Right. Right.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, this is our first pod of 2021, man. Happy 2021, y'all. Let's get into it. All right. The first game of the wild card weekend is going to be Colts Bills Saturday at noon, I believe. Early in the day.
So tomorrow at around 12:05 p.m. Central Time, depending on where you are and where you're listening from, the Indianapolis Colts, who finished the regular season 11-5, will take on the Buffalo Bills, who finished as the 2 seed, 13-3 record. And you can find this game on CBS. So I guess I'll go first with my thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you counteract. Okay, so the Colts and the Bills. I'm hoping this is a close game, but the Bills come in on a roll. If it weren't for the Hail Mary, Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins, and that week 13 or 14 game, the Bills would be coming in on a 10-game winning streak, which when you really think about that in the NFL, that's pretty insane. They've caught fire the last 6 games. They're averaging 38 points per game, and they've won each of the games by 10 or more points. So they're scoring a lot, and they're dominating opponents. They're one of the hottest offenses in the league. They're ranked second in the NFL at 31 points per game this regular season, and they were tied for second with almost 400 yards per game, 396. And then not to mention their defense, while it may give up a lot of yards, They tie third in the NFL with takeaways with 26. So they're an opportunistic defense. So I think when you combine that with the fact that it's going to be cold, the Bills play in a dome, they play inside, I think the Bills can force a couple turnovers.
You mean the Colts? The Colts play inside.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I think the Bills, given those stats, I think they'll be able to force a couple turnovers. They'll get the ball to their playmakers on the outside, Diggs and Beasley. I think Josh Allen is much improved, probably the most improved quarterback in the league this season. I don't think there's any way you can argue that. I think he'll have learned from what happened last year against Houston, and he'll play better this time. For the Colts, if they want to pull off the upset, they're going to have to play to their strengths. They're going to have to run the football with Jonathan Taylor, and they're going to have to stop the run and, force Josh Allen into some bad decisions. But I think the Bills are just going to be too much. They're coming in hot. I think their defense will force a couple turnovers, and they'll end up winning this game by about 10 to 14 points. I'm going to say 34 to 24 Buffalo.
Okay. Well, I agree with you. I woke up early and I got some prep done. This is like one of the few games that I actually got the amount of prep that I wanted to done. So I'm going to break down a little bit what this Colts team is really looking like. So the Colts, to me, they have a good but not great offense and a good but not great defense. So what does that mean? The Colts are undefeated this year when they've scored 27 points or more. That's basically what it means. They're able to get stops here and there to be able to put the offense in position to where if they can score enough, they'll win the game. And the big key for this game, though, is just going to be, will they be able to score enough? Because you know that the Bills will be able to put points up on the board with how they're playing. That I feel like that goes without question. So the big key is going to be, will they be able to run the football with Jonathan Taylor? So in Jonathan Taylor's last 5 games, 13 carries, 91 yards against Houston, 7 yards per carry, 20 carries, 150 yards versus Las Vegas, 7.5 yards per carry, 16 carries, 83 yards against Houston again, 5.2 yards per carry. And then the one good defense they played over that stretch, Pittsburgh, 18 carries, 74 yards, 4.1 yards per carry, which is still pretty solid. 30 carries, 253 yards versus Jacksonville, which I think is the Colts rookie record, I believe. But the thing I noticed about those matchups is the quality of opponent, right? So over the course of the NFL season, only 11 teams gave up 2,000 yards overall as a defense. And over the last 5 weeks, the Colts played 4 of those teams. So over the last 5 weeks, they've played 4 teams that have given up 2,000 yards. So near the bottom of the league in rushing defense. So my question is, how much of this tear that Jonathan Taylor's been on has been quality of opponent, and how much of it has been him? Because if you look at the first 10 weeks of the season, the Colts were near the bottom of the league in yards per carry. That's not good if you're the Colts. And then if you look at the Colts defensively, they play a lot of cover 3 and a lot of Tampa 2. So let's look at how Josh Allen fares against those defenses. 67% completion percentage, 2,700 yards, 8.5 yards per attempt with 20 touchdowns and only 5 picks. And that's from YouTuber Brett Coleman. So it doesn't look good. I think that this game will be close early, and depending on how the weather is, it might actually play to the Colts' favor because the Bills might be held back offensively in terms of throwing the football if the winds are just crazy, and that might actually play to the Colts' favor. But I'm gonna pick the Bills here, 42-20.
One more thing on this game. If the Colts want to win, they're gonna have to be on script early, and they're gonna have to get ahead, run clock, run the football, as you mentioned. I think they can run against this Buffalo team. It's not some steel curtain or whatever you want to, they can be run on. It has happened. But I just think if you ask Phillip Rivers to ad-lib and improvise and throw the football a ton, 40-plus times, come from behind, I just don't think that's going to work. So you have to be on script early, take a lead, and keep the football away from this Bills offense, the hottest offense in the league coming into the game. Okay, so with that, we will move on. We both have Buffalo winning. The next game will be tomorrow, 3:40 p.m. Central Time. The Los Angeles Rams, 10-6, at the Seattle Seahawks. I'll let you go first.
Okay. The divisional matchups in the playoffs are always the hardest to pick for me because a lot of times, and in this case especially, these are two teams that are built to beat each other. If you look at how the Rams are built defensively, they're great up front, and they have two great corners. Jalen Ramsey, you can put him on DK Metcalf, and we've seen the impact he's had. And you put, I believe is Williams. I forgot his first name. Put him on the other side on Tyler Lockett, and you'll see that impact. But the key thing for me is for picking these kind of games that are divisional opponents. It just has to do with how they are playing coming into the game. And in this case, it makes it even harder to pick because looking at these last few weeks, both of these teams have looked So for this case, I just have to pick based on the team I can see turning it around and showing up in a playoff game. And for me, that's the Seahawks because they have Russell Wilson. If you look at the Rams offensively, I find it hard for me to trust it, even though they have Sean McVay, even though that he's one of the best coaches in the NFL. I don't know if I trust Jared Goff. And also, they've had a lot of unexcusable penalties over the last few weeks. And if you put Jared Goff in a 3rd and long situation where he struggles to play make out of structure, it's not going to be pretty, especially since Seattle over the back half of the season has been a top 5 pass rush, which is crazy to think about the fact that they went from being so awful in the first few weeks and then completely turned it around. So I got to pick Seattle.
I have to agree with you, but this has pretty much nothing to do with the games, but I just want for our audience, this is something to look out for this weekend. In terms of wild card weekend, the road team has won 6 of the last 8 NFL wildcard games over the past 2 seasons. And since the 2017 playoffs began, road teams are 9-3. So that's just something to look out for. Doesn't mean anything in particular for this weekend. Just something to watch out for. If road teams come in and win, especially in this day and age when there's limited to no fans, don't be surprised. Now, in this game, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but this says that the status of Jared Goff is still uncertain. So that definitely plays a role now. Credit to John Walford, the backup, played very well in the season finale against Arizona. Or was it?
Yeah, it was Arizona, right.
Yes. He played very well. Better than anyone, I think, expected him to. But if Jared Goff is out, I just do like Seattle, even though their offense has been pretty actually pitiful the past couple of weeks. Up until that second half against San Francisco last weekend, they've been pretty pitiful. But as we've seen time and time again, Russell Wilson only needs one or two great drives. We saw at the end of the first half, and we've seen him do it at the end of the first half to keep Seattle in football games. We've seen him do it at the end of games to win football games. And I wouldn't expect anything different here. As opposed to last season, they come into this postseason relatively healthy. Their running backs are healthy, which I think is big. I think they're going to run the football a lot. They have struggled with the Rams, so don't be surprised if this game is close. These teams know each other very well, and even if Jared Goff plays, don't expect Seattle to just run away with this game. The Rams have done a very good job. In fact, Jalen Ramsey limited DK Metcalf to 8 catches for just 87 yards across the 2 divisional games they played this regular season. So Jalen Ramsey's been very good against Seattle's top receiver, but I just think as opposed to last year, they come in healthy. They're going to be able to utilize different bodies in running the football. And as we've seen time and time again, it might be low scoring, but all Russell Wilson needs is 1 or 2 great drives to win this football game. And I think he'll get them. So I'm going to take Seattle 23-17.
Right. I think it'll be low scoring as well. I'm going to take Seattle 21-20.
21-20. Okay. So we both agree on the first 2 games, relatively.
Right.
So let's go ahead and make this quick and transition to the final game of tomorrow. That will be the NFC East divisional winner, the Washington football team at 7-9, hosting Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Tom Brady in his, now his 22nd or 23rd year, has never been an actual wild card team. He's played in the wild card game, but it's always been as a divisional winner. He's always had the home field advantage. He's never gone on the road. And, that's beside the point, but he's never been on the road in a playoff game. That's the point. In terms of what I think for this game, I think this game is going to be a lot closer than people think. Tampa Bay has hit their strides the past couple weeks, but let's see. Washington's defense ranked 2nd in total yards allowed per game, 2nd in pass yards allowed per game, 4th in points allowed per game at around 21. And they're tied 5th in interceptions and 5th in sacks with 47. So they rank pretty much top 5 in all the basic defensive categories. I do think Tampa Bay will win this game, but I believe if Alex Smith is playing, I think that Washington defense can maybe force a turnover too, create a short field for Alex Smith in the offense, and keep Washington in this game to about the 4th quarter. Of anything else I want to say? Oh, just some history again. Nothing really to do with this game, but since divisional play began, there have been 2 other teams in league history to win their division with and make the playoffs with a record below 500. Those teams were the 2010 Seahawks, when they went on that run, and Beast Mode had that run against New Orleans. We all remember that. And the 2014 Carolina Panthers, the year before, they went on that Super Bowl run, where they went 15-1 and Cam won MVP. Both those teams were victorious in their home wild card playoff games. So both times this has happened, the team with the losing record has won, but that has nothing to do with this. I still think Tampa Bay will have enough offensively. We've seen Antonio Brown get more involved here in the latter parts of the season, the past 3 to 4 weeks. I don't know the status of Mike Evans. I think he was banged up a little bit in that last game, but I think they should still be okay. The plethora of weapons they have, the experience Tom Brady provides. Alex Smith has been in these games before, but he is 1-4 in his past 5 playoff games. So I just think Tampa Bay will have more punch offensively. I'll take them to pull away in the fourth quarter. I just can't see Washington scoring all that much. I'm going to say 31-20.
Okay. This is an interesting game. Washington, they come in 7-9, but like it feels like, I think the way the season went, it felt worse than that. But they really, like, with Alex Smith at quarterback, they went 5-1. So
Right.
That should tell you a lot more about where they're at. Like, obviously, their quality of opponents, you can question that, whatever you want to do. But 5-1 is 5-1. That speaks for itself. My key matchup here in this game is the Washington's offensive line versus Tampa Bay. Obviously, Alex Smith coming off of that injury, he's not nearly as mobile as he once was. So a big key will be being able to give him a clean pocket so he can step into some of these throws, because he's shown he's still very, very accurate when he's able to have a clean pocket. And Tampa Bay, the guys like Vita Vea, Shaquille Barrett, JPP, they're going to have to impose their will. And if they do, this could be a runaway. But if they don't, this game could be a lot closer than people think. And I could definitely see a scenario where they pull off the upset. But here's the thing with Tampa Bay on offense as well. The strength of Tampa Bay lines up with the weakness of Washington, so to speak. The secondary of Washington isn't nearly as good as their front. But here's the thing. Tom Brady, we've seen in his career against elite pass rushes, especially ones that can rush him up the middle, that's where he struggled. So the key will be finding their matchups, cherry-picking their matchups. Guys like Gronk, Godwin, obviously AB, put them in situations where they can win one-on-one, and then it'll just from there it'll be just backyard football. If they're able to do that, then they'll win this game. I think it'll be close. I'm gonna say 20-14, and I think it'll be they'll keep it around that 10-point lead range, and then maybe Washington will get a late touchdown.
Okay. Yeah, I think everything you said is spot on. That Buccaneers offense finished third in points per game with around 31 per game, and they allowed the fourth fewest sacks, only 22 in 2020.
Right.
So, as you mentioned, the teams that have beaten Tom Brady in the playoffs and the Super Bowl with those Giants teams, they were able to create pressure and collapse the pocket, get interior pressure, and have the outside guys, the edge rushers, really finish the rush.
Right.
So that's what Washington's going to have to do, and they're very capable. I mean, I mentioned the stat, tied fifth in sacks, 47. That's one less than Tampa Bay has. So both these teams have capable pass rushes. It'll just be which team really protects their quarterback better. And for Washington, they're going to need a couple turnovers if they want to have a chance to win.
Right. And Tampa Bay's offensive line really hasn't gotten enough credit this year, in my opinion. Like, I think this is probably the best offensive line Tom Brady has had in maybe the last 5-6 years of his career, give or take. I mean, it feels like these last couple years, especially, he's just been like every other play. It feels like he just has to throw it away, So.
Okay, well, that does it for the Saturday triple header. Let's move on to the Sunday triple header.
Yeah, this is where it gets a little bit interesting.
Start off with AFC matchup, and I'll let you start with your thoughts on this one. The 11-5 Baltimore Ravens, I believe they finished their season with 4 or 5 straight victories.
Right.
And the Tennessee Titans, 11-5. This is one of the more intriguing games of the weekend.
Right.
I have to say, you can catch this game on ESPN or ABC Sunday at noon Central Time. So I'll let you give your thoughts first.
This game, this feels like it could be the game of the weekend, but it also feels like these are two teams that are going in opposite directions. Baltimore, they're one of the hottest teams in the league, and I also think that in a lot of ways they're more of a complete team than they were last year. We're seeing Lamar beat teams with his arm more. And I feel like they sacrificed some games early in this year to help Lamar develop his arm throwing the football a little bit in game reps, so to speak. And I think that's going to pay off here. This Tennessee defense is not good. And I think with the way Baltimore runs the football, they can stay ahead of the chains and stay in that 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 range. I don't trust Tennessee linebackers to be able to chase Lamar all over the field when he's playmaking and getting out of the pocket and when he's at his best. Because if there's a guy open, he'll be able to hit them. And then if they're playing man, he'll just run. And that dynamic is something that Tennessee has struggled with. We saw what Deshaun Watson did to them last week. So I feel like this Tennessee team, what we think of them as being is a good matchup against Baltimore, but they're not that anymore. Like, if you look at Tennessee's identity, they're going to run the football, they're going to get a lead early, pound the rock with Derrick Henry. But they're not going to be able to do that if their defense doesn't change drastically, and I just don't see that happening. So I'm going to pick Baltimore in this game simply because Tennessee is a flawed football team in a lot of ways, like Baltimore was a flawed football team last year.
Right. Yeah, I think this really comes down to the fact that if you look at it, this might just be, a psychological thing, but Baltimore, as opposed to last year, is really playing with not a whole lot of pressure on them. They're coming in, 2 months ago, people were saying this team was going to miss the playoffs. And look at them now. They're running a 5-game winning streak, and they're one of the hottest teams in the league offensively. You hit it spot on the head. This Tennessee defense is awful. Here's a stat. They've allowed the most points per drive of any playoff team. Any team in the playoffs, any of the 14 teams, they've allowed the most points per drive. And I know that's kind of a weird stat, but that's what it is. 2.56 points per drive, if that makes sense. Y'all should be able to comprehend that. The Titans, especially if you look at the strength on strength, well, not the strength on strength, but the Baltimore strength and what they're going to try to do, run the football. They led the NFL with over 3,000 rushing yards, which is just insane. Titans surrendered 84 yards on 14 carries to David Johnson last week, who this season has mostly struggled Texans rushing attack ranks last in efficiency, whatever that means. So I think you're right. Tennessee's defense is broken. They can't get off the field on third downs. They can't stop the run. They give up big plays from time to time over the top. Baltimore's healthy, as far as I know. They're playing with less pressure on them. So, yeah, I think where Tennessee's weak, Baltimore is strong. And even though Ryan... Yeah, guys, we had a technical difficulty. The recording stopped for one reason or the other, but we're back. We were talking about this matchup between Baltimore and Tennessee. Emmy mentioned how the Tennessee's defense is pretty much broken. It's pitiful. There's no reason to think that's going to change. Baltimore's playing with less pressure. They're a hot football team riding a 5-game winning streak. Tennessee's defense allows the most points per drive of any team in the playoffs. That's really all you need to know. And they struggle to stop David Johnson in the Houston rushing attack, one of the worst statistically in the league. So I don't think there's any way that they're going to be able to slow down this Baltimore attack, which led the NFL in rushing once again. And then I think when you really look at strength on strength, Baltimore is the second best scoring defense in the league, only allowing around 19 points per game. Tennessee did put up a lot of points once again, and they do have Derrick Henry, who became only the 8th player in league history to rush for over 2,000 yards in a season, which is pretty incredible. But if you look at last year, in those two playoff upsets, I guess you could call them, the Patriots and the Baltimore on their way to the AFC Championship game, I think the stat is Ryan Tannehill threw a total of 28 passes in those two games. So I think this game, they might fall behind because that defense isn't really going to be relied upon to stop anybody. And we know Ryan Tannehill statistically has been one of the best statistically ever since he got the start in Week 7 of last season. Ever since he became Tennessee starter, he's looked very good on paper. But I just think if you ask them to get in a shootout, Baltimore's defense will definitely be better suited to get those critical stops in critical situations than Tennessee's defense would. So I still think it's going to be high scoring. I still think Tennessee will hang around. It's not to say this game's going to be some sort of just blowout. I'm going to say Baltimore 38, Tennessee 27.
Okay. I've had a key matchup for all the games so far. So for me, this game, the key matchup is going to be the Baltimore wide receivers versus the Tennessee corners. If they can win those matchups, I think that will be the difference in Baltimore extending the lead further and making it not close. But if the game is close, another thing to point out is Steven Gostkowski. They've had trouble with kicking the entire season. They've actually just had to get a new kicker. So if it comes down to a field goal, I don't know if I trust Tennessee to make the kick, but I guess that's only if that comes to be that. So I'm gonna pick Baltimore. I'm gonna say 35-31.
Okay, cool. I think that's all we really have to say on this game.
Right.
Let's move on to the 5th of the 6 wildcard games of this weekend. I will let you go first on this one. It is Chicago Bears got into the playoffs as a result of the Arizona Cardinals collapse.
Right.
8-8. They're the 7th seed, and they will take on the Saints, 12-4, in New Orleans tomorrow on CBS, Nickelodeon, and Amazon Prime Video. Huh. All right.
Yeah. This game, I actually have seen a lot of mixed opinions on this game. I've looked through Twitter, and it feels like this game, if there were to be an upset, people are choosing this one as the one. But here's why I don't agree with that. It's simply because of New Orleans' defense. I know they're not going to have Alvin Kamara. I know this is Michael Thomas's first game back in a while, but from the simple fact that New Orleans' defense is better than all the hoopla that Chicago has played over the past whatever amount of weeks it's been. If you look at it, they've played all just mediocre to bad defenses. Like, they haven't played a good defense. And the team that has a okay defense, Green Bay, they weren't able to get it done. So I feel like this is going to be a reality check for Chicago. I think this is going to be a blowout. It's going to get ugly. And we might see Mitchell Trubisky. This might be Mitchell Trubisky's. I hope it's Mitchell Trubisky's last game in Chicago. We'll see what they do. They're prone to making some pretty questionable decisions. But I'm going to pick New Orleans to win in a blowout, 27-9.
Yeah, this just comes down to the simple fact that this is just a mismatch of one roster's, you could argue, the best constructed in the NFL, definitely top 3, top 5, and the other has its limitations. Now, Chicago, if they want to keep this game any sort of close, I do agree with you. It's going to get ugly. This might be like the one actual blowout that we have this weekend. They're going to have to give the ball to David Montgomery, and they're going to have to do that a lot. He did rank 5th in the NFL with a career-high 1,500 scrimmage yards. That's 1,000 rushing and about 430 receiving. So he does give the offense a little bit of versatility in that respect. He can catch the ball in the backfield and run the football. They're going to need a heavy dose of him, and they're going to need that defense, which consists of Khalil Mack. They're going to need him and others to create turnovers. But I just think this New Orleans team, they can throw so many different things at you, even though they're not, necessarily going to, beat you over the top. But they're going to run the football with Alvin Kamara, who I think in his last game tied the single-season NFL record with 6 rushing touchdowns in that Week 16 Christmas Day victory over the Vikings. And he finished this season with 21 total touchdowns, which led the league. 16 rushing, 5 receiving. He also ranked 3rd in scrimmage yards and led all running backs in receptions. So he can just do a little bit of everything. You add the fact they can throw in Taysom Hill into that running game, even the passing game as well. The receivers on the outside, Emmanuel Sanders, has stepped up huge in the past couple weeks in that New Orleans defense. I think we'll be able to, like you said, hopefully force Chicago's hand and make this Mitchell Trubisky's last game as the starting quarterback of the Chicago Bears. Now, 2 years ago in that one playoff game Trubisky did have, he did throw for over 300 yards, and he threw for a touchdown and didn't turn the ball over in that one start. But that really has nothing to do with now. I still think this is going to end up being a pretty ugly game. I'm going to say New Orleans. Oh, boy. 31-13.
Okay, yeah. Right around the same range for both of our scores there. So we'll move on to the last game of the weekend. Oh man, I'm gonna let you start off here. This is your team, so go ahead.
Yeah, we have the Cleveland Browns making the playoffs for the first time in 18 years. Congratulations. Props to Kevin Stefanski and the crew. 11-5, coming into Heinz Field. Pittsburgh kind of limping into the playoffs, so to speak. Starting 11-0, finishing 12-4, but, once you start the playoffs, all of that really kind of goes out the window. It's a new season. But anyways, let me address the elephant in the room. Juju Smith-Schuster, with his, I guess you can call him, he's been sort of a thorn in our side. I'll have to admit, this season with all the, pre-game dancing and dancing on opposing teams' logos and disrespecting the other team and blah, blah, blah. But yesterday, I don't know when exactly this occurred, but he came on. He was asked a question by a reporter about what he feels about this Cleveland team. Does this Cleveland team feel any different to you? Do you think the vibe is different with this Cleveland team? And he used some words that were questionable. He called them nameless gray faces, a word I don't think he really intended to use. I don't think this was intended to take shots at the Browns, but he did say they have a couple good players, but I'm happy that we're playing the Browns again in the playoffs. They just played them last week. And you can read the full quote. It's all over Twitter. It's all over social media. I don't have it exactly here in front of me. But here's what I'll say. I'll say this. I think what he was really saying is Cleveland, they had a good season. They have some good players. He did, in fact, say, if you read the full quote, he did say they're a good team. But they've yet to really prove themselves against the not only the elite teams, but the fathers and the really owners of the AFC North, the Steelers and the Ravens went at full strength. I think that's what he was really trying to say. His choice of words and the timing isn't great, but I don't really buy into that. You just got to go out and execute on Sunday night, get the job done. Now, I do think this will put him under the microscope, under more of an individual microscope to play well on Sunday. Don't go out there and put a dud up on the board with only one or two catches. You're going to need to play well, Juju, or else this is going to backfire, especially within the media. But I think it's all really kind of extracurricular fluff. If the Browns needed any extra motivation to go out and try and beat their divisional rivals in their first playoff game in 18 years, then I think they've kind of just lost hope. But anyway, that's beside the point. Apologize for the rant. In terms of the game, as a Steelers fan, I will say that I won't be surprised if Cleveland comes in and beats Pittsburgh. I won't. You look at the multitude of problems Pittsburgh has had on offense in particular, but also on defense the past couple games with their inability to stop the run. It's been kind of a problem, but they do have, Robert Spillane's been out, Vince Williams been out. They've been decimated by injuries. And their inability to run the football on the offensive side has really been a problem all season. I think those problems could come back to bite them in this game. And you look at Cleveland, they're good in both those areas. They're pretty good at stopping the run, and they're really good at running the football. You got the two-headed monster in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Pittsburgh's going to have to neutralize that. And the biggest key is going to be they're going to have to hit shots down the field like they did in the second half of that Colts game. It can't be Ben dinking and dunking because defense, as we saw, eventually caught on to that after the first 11 games. That's going to be the key. It's going to be, can Pittsburgh's offensive line create any sort of run game, push and try and create some runs of more than 2 yards? And can they hit on that play action? Can Ben throw the deep ball? If they can do that, I think they should win. They are, I think, getting Robert Spillane back this game, so that should help. They're getting, I think, all their healthy defensive players are going to play this game. T.J. Watt didn't play last week. Cam Hayward didn't play last week. But, they'll be playing this game fully healthy except Joe Hayden. He's out with COVID, but that's beside the point. I think they should be able to win this game if they do that. But won't be surprised if Cleveland wins because overall they're a more balanced football team. I think that's fair to say. But I'm going to have to go with my Steelers in a close game. I think if you're a Browns fan, just making the playoffs, getting over that hump, getting to 11 wins, I think if you were to ask yourself before the season, okay, we have 11 wins, we make the playoffs, and we keep it relatively close in Pittsburgh in our first playoff game in 18 years, I think you would take that. So I'm going to have to take Pittsburgh. Roethlisberger, this could be his last chance at the playoffs. I don't think he wants to go out with a loss to Cleveland.
Right.
I'm going to say Pittsburgh wins. Well, they did score 22 with Mason Rudolph, and that Cleveland secondary is kind of suspect. I'm going to say 28-23.
Okay. Yeah, you hit it right on the head, man. Obviously we had a little, I guess not argument, but we talked about that Juju thing last night. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm still going to pick Pittsburgh. Here's the thing. I think I have a theory that the reason they benched Big Ben was to rest his arm. I think that's the underlying fact, that I think Big Ben's arm, it was really deteriorating over the last few weeks of the season. He really wasn't able to drive the ball downfield the same way as he did the first maybe 5 weeks of the season, because he looked great the first 5 weeks, if I remember correctly. So I think some of the flack the Steelers got for benching Big Ben, they were saying that they need a get right game. They need to get some momentum going into the playoffs. And I think despite Big Ben not being there, they kind of did that. They had a okay offensive game overall, I think. And another factor is an experienced team like Pittsburgh. I think they'll come ready to play. The thing with Pittsburgh has always been getting up for the bad teams. It's never been about getting up and getting after it against the good teams, especially a divisional opponent. They're going to come out. They're going to be ready to play. I think they'll get out to a lead earlier, maybe get a turnover, and I think they'll win the game. I think they'll win in a close, low-scoring battle. I think it'll be a really fun matchup. I think they'll win 20-17.
Yeah. In the playoffs, all the regular season pretty much goes out the window. The records really don't matter.
Right.
Especially this year, that extra team in each conference. It's just who's ready to go when the game starts and who plays the best football overall. First whistle, the last whistle. So it's going to be a really fun wild card weekend. 6 games. We just broke them all down for you, best we could. We agree on pretty much, I think, all of them, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have, just a quick recap. We have Buffalo winning by a decent margin at home. We have Seattle winning close. We have Tampa Bay winning but don't be surprised if Washington hangs around. We have Baltimore going on the road and beating Tennessee by a pretty good margin. We have New Orleans blowing out Chicago, and we have Pittsburgh winning close against Cleveland. So it's going to be a great weekend. Hopefully we get 6 really good games. And we'll be back next weekend to break down the divisional round. But before we sign off, do you want to talk about Monday's national championship?
Yeah, let's do it. But before we do that, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to restart and talk about that national championship game, what we expect, and all of that. So we're going to take a short break here. We'll be back. Have y'all ever thought about starting your own podcast but thought it would be too complicated? If your answer to that question is yes, let me tell you about Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to start a quality podcast. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from any device. And on top of that, Anchor is owned by Spotify, so you have access to a full library of sound effects, background music, transitions, and even full songs that you can add in. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, and it will hook you up with sponsors so you can make money on your podcast. It's literally everything you could ever need to start a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome back, everyone. They're still listening to the Raw Prospect Podcast, obviously. We've never done this segment thing before. So if you like this format that we're doing now with the transition music between segments, leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear your feedback. But with that being said, we're just going to get right into this national championship game. But before we do that, I wanted to get some of your thoughts on what happened in the first round of playoff games, and I'm going to give some of my thoughts too. Yeah,
we'll start with the first semifinal, the Rose Bowl, which was played in Arlington. Alabama beat Notre Dame. I think, what was it, 31 to 17?
It was ugly. Whatever it was.
Yeah, just kind of expected. Alabama, they ran the ball really effectively with Najee Harris once again. Got the ball to Devontae Smith, and Notre Dame really couldn't stop it. So That's what happened in that game. We knew that if Notre Dame's defense, the real strength of that football team, we ranked like 3rd or 4th in the nation in scoring defense over the course of the regular season. I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but you can fact check that, and I'd be relatively close. We knew that if they were able to get some turnovers or force some, 3-and-outs or punts or whatever you want to say, that this game was going to be really hard for them to win. They would have to play pretty much a perfect game and get those turnovers. They were able to run the football pretty effectively when they did with Kyron Williams, the running back. I thought they should have done more. They should have run the football more, because when they did it pretty effectively. And they had a couple pretty good drives. There was a drive in, I think, the second quarter when they went down the field in like 16 plays. It took over 8 minutes off the clock, and they scored a touchdown. That was a really good drive, and that they needed, a couple more of those to keep this game close. But Alabama just had more horses, more talented, made more plays, as expected.
Right.
And then the second semifinal, who would have thought? Some said Ohio State could keep it close, and but Clemson will win. But who would have thought that Ohio State would run Clemson off the field? I sure didn't. People were rightfully so critical of Justin Fields coming into the game. He struggled in the Big Ten championship against Northwestern. Struggled in that game against Indiana. Wasn't necessarily, himself coming into this game. But, man, that was an all-time performance if I've ever seen one.
Right.
I mean, it's touchdowns. He did throw the one pick, but at that point, Ohio State had the game in control. It wasn't really something that really turned the tide or anything of this game. He made one mistake, but, the performance by him playing through that injury, that hit to the rib, that I was grimacing at that hit while I was watching the game. I couldn't imagine how he felt. Hitting on those deep balls, man, he just played one hell of a game. He had pretty much the game of his college career, and it came at the right time.
Right.
What was that?
No, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Ohio State's defense, they were able to, I guess, create wreak more havoc than Clemson's defense did. Clemson's defense looked confused to me. It didn't look prepared for what hit them. I don't really like to get into it, like I mentioned with the in our last segment with the Juju Smith-Schuster extracurricular trash talk, whatever you want to call it. I don't really like to get into the Dabo Swinney ranking Ohio State 11th. That really didn't play much of a factor. I mean, maybe it gave Ohio State a little bit of an extra kick. Yeah, sure, but that didn't play much of a factor in the outcome of this game. It was really just Justin Fields looked unstoppable. He had one of those Deshaun Watson nights. He had that look in his eyes, like we're not losing this game. Like,
right.
I'm tired of all the slander. We're going to go out here and we're going to prove to the media and to everyone else watching this that we are capable of beating Clemson. And we'll see, but we are capable of beating the best teams like Alabama and Clemson when we play our best football.
Right.
And that's what we saw. So, while the second game was a surprise, the first game wasn't. And I'm looking forward to Monday.
Yeah. Before we go on to the national championship stuff, I just want to say this. In the draft classes where there is a quarterback with an insane amount of hype, a la Trevor Lawrence, there's been a trend where that quarterback debatably may not even be the best player best QB in his draft class. If you look at John Elway, Dan Marino was in that draft class. And if you look at, what he was able to do, it's debatable. Obviously, Dan Marino didn't win a Super Bowl. But if you look at the numbers, they're similar in every single way. A better example, though, would be 2012, Andrew Luck. Russell Wilson was in that draft class. And
yeah, that worked out.
Yeah, right. And who would have thought, So don't just be thinking that this draft is a one quarterback draft class. It's far from it. You could see 3 or 4 guys come out of this draft class and turn out to be solid NFL quarterbacks. And you might even see one of these guys become better than Trevor Lawrence.
Absolutely.
So just something to keep in mind. So let's get into this national championship game. Alabama and Ohio State. I think the last time these teams played was in that semifinal a few years ago. Cardale Jones, Ezekiel Elliott, all those guys. Wow, this should be interesting. I don't know. I really don't know what to make of this game. I'm having a hard time gauging where both of these teams are at because it was such a weird season. I was a Clemson guy coming into the playoff. Like I was big on picking Clemson to maybe win it all this year, and then they come out and lay an egg, and they didn't look good at all. And I think that just speaks to some of the way college football is structured with some of the matchups that these teams are able to cherry pick with like Western North Carolina State or something like that. It's just like you don't know what these teams are until they're really on the big stage. I think I'm going to take Alabama, though. I think this game has the chance of being one of the best national championships we've ever had since the college football era, and that's saying something. We've had some great games, simply from the fact that it's a different matchup. Ohio State and Alabama national championship is obviously it's similar. It's still two like blue blood schools, I guess. I guess that's a college basketball term, but you get the point. It's not Alabama and Clemson anymore, or just the same two teams. So this feels like it could be a really great game. But if Ohio State can stop Alabama's run game, I think they're going to have a shot at winning. Obviously they'll have a shot no matter what. But I just feel so I don't feel good about picking either of these teams, going in. So yeah. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'm so indifferent about what's going on,
Well, it's interesting. Now, the last time these two teams met, you mentioned it, I believe, was the 2015 Sugar Bowl. And in that game, Ohio State beat Bama. But you look at the NFL talent on both sides of the ball in that game. For Ohio State, you had Ezekiel Elliott and I believe Michael Thomas.
Right.
Same receiver.
Right.
And on the Alabama side of things, you had Derrick Henry and Amari Cooper. So this was a classic, but Ohio State won. And in this game, I think it really comes down to which team wins in the trenches and which team, I guess, runs the football more effectively and who wins the turnover margin. Whoever can get those extra one or two drives, that's going to provide a huge advantage to whoever that may be. I think for Ohio State, while Justin Fields may not have a game like he did in the semifinal, throwing for 6 touchdowns, I think he'll still have a really good. I think he'll play a really good game.
Right.
Now, I think the question really for him is, what sort of how's that rib feeling? What's the status of his health coming into this game? We know they had 9 or 10 days off in between. What was it? A week ago today and Monday, so that's about 10 days off. But what's going to be the status of his health coming to this game? I think you have to. Ohio State this season, they found the most success when they turn around and give the ball to Trey Sermon, the OU transfer, who had over 300 yards rushing in the Big Ten Championship and had another great game last weekend against Clemson. It was just overshadowed by the fact that Justin Fields threw for 6 touchdowns.
Right.
Trey Sermon still had a fantastic game. So I think, turnover margin and which team runs the football more effectively. Now, for Ohio State's defense, it's going to be a challenge. They said there is a chance that, and this is pretty crazy, because they already have the Heisman Trophy winner, Devontae Smith, but they're saying that Jalen Waddle, the other first-round receiver on this Alabama team, has a chance to play in this game, coming back from whatever injury was ailing him for the past 8 weeks of the season. So, I think it comes down to winning in the trenches, running the football. I still take Alabama to win just because it's Nick Saban. This team I don't think you're going to be able to stop them. It's going to be very tough. But I wouldn't count out Ohio State. They've proven to us now that they can compete when they play their best football, as I said previously. And if they give Trey Sermon a good dose of carries, they get Master T and all their other running backs, and they're able to run the football effectively, and Justin Fields doesn't turn the ball over and give Alabama any extra possessions, and they're able to sustain some longer drives to give their defense some rest, because they're going to need it. Alabama's going to score a lot of points. Then, yeah, they'll have a fighting chance, a puncher's chance in this game. But I have to go with Bama. I think they're going to complete the undefeated season. They're prepared for this. 10 SEC games in the regular season, beating Florida in the SEC championship, and then beating another really good football team in Notre Dame. I'm going to say it's going to be high scoring. Obviously, now I have some sort of rooting interest. I want to see my new football coach, Steve Sarkisian, call a good offensive game. This is his showcase for Texas football fans. Call a good game, have that offense do what it's done all season, go put lots of points on the board. But I'm going to say I wouldn't be surprised if either team gets up into the 40s. This has a chance to be a classic, as you said. 42 to 34. 42-34.
Seems legit. I mean,
keep it relatively close.
Right. I think it's gonna be high scoring for sure. But I feel like it'll be high scoring in the way like that Kansas City LA Rams game was from a few years ago. It'll be high scoring with maybe a defensive touchdown here and there, like not just all offense. So I think this will be like a combination of everything. That's why I think this might be like a classic game, because these teams match up so well against each other, and they're so complete on both sides. Because I think coming into the playoff, we had questions about Ohio State, maybe like on offense or on defense, but at this point they've blown all those questions out of the water. So at this point, it's just is what their strengths good enough to match Alabama's strengths?
Right. Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. Hopefully we get a great game. I really don't have anything else to say. I didn't do any necessary prep for this.
Right. I didn't prep for the college football segment, but I just didn't have enough time.
No, I mean, we hit really what this game comes down to right on the head. The turnover battle is going to be huge, and obviously the strength of these two teams. Wow, both of them can be explosive in the passing game. They really feed off their running games, Trey Sermon and Najee Harris, respectively. So we'll see what happens. Ryan Day coaching in his, I believe, first national championship game, and Saban's been here, done that, so we'll see how that plays a factor in this. But, yeah, I think we all expect Alabama to win, but you never know. You never know. That's all I have to say.
Right, yeah. There's really not much more we can say about it. That's going to do it, y'all. In terms of when the next episode is going to be, I can't be too sure, to be honest. But I will say that you should be expecting the San Antonio Spurs episode to come out soon. Michael's going to be starting that series. And then I'm going to be recording the Mavericks series at some point this weekend. We just got a big win against the Nuggets. I need to talk about that.
We just beat the Lakers. So.
Right. Yeah. 2 big wins. Yeah, exactly. So look out for that. And as for the next episode of our podcast, we're just going to roll with the punches. Right now I'm in a interterm class where it's just a lot of like time consuming work because we're doing an entire semester in 3 weeks. So one day is like a week's worth of content. With everything that's going on, I think the best bet for an episode will probably be next weekend.
we'll just have to roll with the punches. Of course, as Emmy said, I'll be doing the Spurs miniseries hopefully tonight. Don't have anything going on tonight. So I'll hopefully be able to get that in tonight. Lots to cover there. Both our teams, we need to talk NBA sooner than later.
Right.
Both our teams are 4-4 in the mix, just hanging in there. For the Mavs, waiting for Kristaps to come back. And for the Spurs, still without Derek White. So when he comes back, that should add another element to this team. But, yeah, we'll be back probably not this next week to talk NBA, but there will be an episode for basketball, college and pro, in the next 2 or 3 weeks for sure.
Right, right.
But, yeah, as you said, I think the next episode with us together, I think will probably be next weekend so we can get to the divisional round and maybe some other stuff too.
Right.
So that's going to do it. Like, subscribe.
Share, rate 5 stars. And as always, man, thanks for listening and peace.
Peace out.